What is up, guys? Today we'll be doing my top 5 favorite $300 smartphones. Some of these are a little bit below, but mostly all 300 bucks. So first off, starting with the Moto G9 Plus. This is an excellent smartphone for people who want a really big phone. So this is a pretty, not heavy, but it's a nice feeling phone in the hands. A plastic frame, plastic back, pretty much. But it does not feel super cheap. I like the matte finish on here as well. You don't pick up a whole bunch of fingerprints, which is something that I really like. Now, when you get to the display, it's a 6.81 inch display. It's just huge. It's a big phone. 1080p 386 for the PPI. You have the little punch hole, pretty slim bezels on here as well. So overall, pretty good display. It is HDR10 actually, and it gives off some pretty vibrant and nice colors, and it actually gets fairly bright as well. So you are running a pretty much stock version of Android 10 with the Moto Actions application. So you have the chop and you have the one-handed mode. All of that stuff is in here. So you have the Snapdragon 730G and Adreno 618. So this is actually a pretty good chip. It kept the phone really fast when multitasking and just flying in and out of applications. You can also do some pretty good medium setting to high gaming on this phone as well, which is really nice. So if you guys check out my full gaming test, you can go ahead and check that out in more detail. But you also have micro SD support and 128 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on here, which is very nice. So you do have the headphone jack on here still, which is also very nice. You have NFC on here as well for your mobile payments, and you also have something that I think is really underrated. The fingerprint scanner is side mounted, so instead of it being on the back, it's on the side, which is something that I really love. I just think it's just a really fast and easy way to get into your phone on such a big device. Now let's go ahead and talk about the cameras. You have a quad camera setup. It's a 64 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, and a 2 megapixel depth. You get 4K video, 30 FPS, and a 16 megapixel selfie at 1080p. I'm just going to tell you, this is not going to be the best camera on the list for sure. This camera needs a lot of light, and I'm starting to think it's the software maybe with this phone, because the G8 Power did not take images like this, and it doesn't take terrible images, but you need a lot of light to take good photos, and the video isn't really all that great as well. So that was really the only downside with this phone, was just the image quality was not as good as some of the other phones on this list. Now I think the biggest plus with this phone is the 5000 milliamp battery and 30-watt fast charging. This phone is very hard to kill in a single day. You can easily go 2 days on this phone, maybe 2.5 days if you're a light user. But yeah, I just couldn't kill this phone at all, and it charges very fast too, which is a nice addition. So the G9 Plus is a very good phone. Next is the LG V50 ThinQ. So if you want the most out of your money, you would get this phone because it's got the best specs on this list, and it also has 5G as well, which is crazy. So 322 on Amazon. Again, all links will be down below. You got a premium designs, glass and metal, just feels super solid in the hands. IP68 dust and water resistant. You have a P OLED display, HDR10, a beautiful display, little notch at the top. It's a 6.4 inch display, 1440p 538 for the PPI. Absolutely beautiful display color wise, and just resolution wise, it's just really sharp when you're looking at icons and text. Just an overall beautiful display. Probably one of my favorite things about this phone. It ships with Android 10. You have the Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640. Again, it's still a flagship chip. You can play games on high, Call of Duty, PUBG, Fortnite, all on high settings, no problem with this phone. Absolutely amazing. I have full gaming tests on most of these phones if you want to check those out. This phone also has micro SD support, 128 gigs of storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. So overall, just a super snappy phone. It's basically a pure stock version of Android, just with a little bit of LG tweaks on here. So the experience is just really good for me. At least you have stereo speakers on here as well, which get pretty loud. And one of the best things about this phone, 3.5mm DAC with the hi-fi quad DAC on here. So if you're really into audio, you will get excellent audio if you have a good pair of headphones. This is just one of the best phones to get if you're very serious audiophile. You do have NFC on here as well as the fingerprint scanner on the back, which is 100% accurate most of the time. It never really fails. And you also have face unlock on this phone too, which is really nice. So the cameras on here are actually really good. So you have a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You get 4K video, 30 or 60 FPS. You also have a dual camera setup up front for like group selfies, which is something that's really nice. An 8 megapixel, then a 5 megapixel wide 1080p video up front. Overall, just great cameras. You get very natural looking colors with LG's image processing, good detail, dynamic range. As you can see from these photos, you will get a really good camera with this phone, which is something that I really like. And for certain shots, you can always download the Gcam application and just sort of bounce back between the two. Is something that I love to do as well. So you do have fairly good battery life on here. 4,000 milliamp battery, 18-watt fast charging, and wireless charging on this phone. My drain test did around 8 hours and 30 minutes, so that's definitely a day and a half of battery life easily for this phone. Next is going to be the Redmi Note 9S. So this is a very good phone I had on the channel. If you guys want to check out the full videos, please do. For the price point, you get a premium design on here as well. It's a glass back but a plastic frame, but it feels just super solid in the hand. It definitely feels like it costs more. So you do have a 6.67 inch IPS display. It's a 1080p display, $395 for the PPI. It's HDR10. You have the little punch hole. It gives off some pretty nice and vibrant colors. Not the brightest phone, but you know, it's okay. It's not the brightest phone, I'll say that. It's not like unseeable outside, but it's definitely, I've seen brighter phones. Now this phone ships with Android 10 and MIUI 12. So overall, I just love MIUI. It's highly customizable. It has a ton of stuff. It kind of reminds me of One UI, and it's just a ton of stuff you can play with in these settings, ton of features and stuff like that. So that is what I really like. And they got a couple features. I went over the whole MIUI 12 if you guys want to check that out. But you have the Snapdragon 720G and Adreno 618. So this is again like a mid-tier chip. So I had no problem gaming on this phone. Again, I like the big display. It's really bright and colorful. I didn't have really any lag at all. So if you want to do some gaming on this phone, you can definitely do that. And you do have micro SD support, only 64 gigs of internal storage, but again, not a big deal because you can expand it. You do have 4 gigs of RAM on here, as well as the headphone jack, and you do not have NFC, so that's one of the things. So if you depend on mobile payments, this phone is not going to have that. But you do have a really cool infrared port, which I think always gets overlooked. You can use your phone as a remote, which is always really nice. And the fingerprint scanner is side mounted on this guy, which is something that I really love. I wish all physical fingerprint scanners would move towards that. So you have actually pretty good cameras on here. A quad camera setup. It's a 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. For this price range, I wasn't really complaining here. You have 4K video, 16 megapixel selfie that shoots in 1080p, and yeah, no issues here. I like Xiaomi's image processing. You get some really nice punchy colors. You get some pretty good detail as well. So overall, no complaints really with the camera here. Now this is another phone that does an excellent job with battery life. A 5020 milliamp battery with 18-watt fast charging. It just does a really good job at not dying in a day. This is a phone that can easily again go 2 days battery life, no problem. So overall, the Note 9S is a really nice phone for you guys to consider. Next is the Galaxy A51, and also I'll link the A71 down below, but it is going to be like $60 more just in case, because it did get a price drop. But if you want to check that one out, it's just like a beefier version of the A51. But the A51 is actually a little cheaper than 300 bucks now, around 260. And this is a very nice phone. It's one of the best selling phones actually. So this has a plastic design, but again, does not feel cheap. It has the really cool psychedelic shifting effect to it, which is something that I really love. This has a beautiful display. It's a Super AMOLED display, 6.5 inch, 1080p, 405 for the PPI. Just a beautiful display, very color accurate. Love the little punch hole, slim bezels on here. Just looks really good from the front. So you have Android 10 with One UI 2.5, which is really nice. You get to take advantage of all of the Samsung features in it. Again, I have a video going over One UI if you guys want to check that out in detail. Now you have the Exynos 9611 and the Mali G72 GPU. Basically, again, it's like a mid-tier chip. So check out my gaming video. You can game on this phone no problem. So I had zero issues with gaming on here. You can play PUBG, Call of Duty. I believe this does not support Fortnite, I believe, but you do have micro SD support, 64 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM, which is really nice to have that expandable storage if 64 is not enough for you. You have the headphone jack on here, as well as NFC for mobile payments. The fingerprint scanner is actually under the glass, so this is the only phone on the list with that feature. It's really cool always to have that. I just think it's really futuristic looking to have on a smartphone. Are the physical ones faster? Yes, but again, I just like this one for cool points. So you do have very good cameras on here. You have a 48 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and a 5 megapixel depth sensor, 4K video, 32 megapixel selfie, 1080p. Again, excellent cameras. There are no cuts with this camera. You get very good detail. Again, Samsung's image processing, very punchy colors, dynamic range is there. The macro camera is fun to play with, but honestly, you can just use the main lens. It does just as good of a job, honestly. But yeah, video on here is solid too. So this is, again, one of the best cameras on the list, up there with the V50. So you do have good battery life on this phone, a 4000 milliamp battery, 15 watt fast charging. Usually I can get through a day of battery life with this phone, no problem, but I do find myself like having to charge it like as soon as I wake up, so just do note that. So it'll get you through a day, no problem. So last on the list is the LG G8. Now if you pick this one up in the refurbished slash renewed, then you can get this well under 300 bucks, but if you want it brand new, they're still going for around 400 bucks. But I'll link the version to the one I have, and you have an aluminum design, so basically the same design as the V50, just smaller. So it's glass and metal, IP68, dust and water resistant, same display but just smaller. It's a POLED 6.1 inch display, 564 for the PPI. A beautiful, very sharp looking display. Absolutely love it. One of my favorite things. It's HDR10, just absolutely beautiful. You do have Android 10 of course on here with the Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640. Again, this is a phone that can play games on high. I have a gaming test. Any game you throw at it, you will be able to play on high. You have micro SD support, 128 gigs of storage and 6 gigs of RAM. Again, a beast when just flying through applications, multitasking, you'll have no problem. This phone does have the headphone jack with the quad DAC, so high quality audio. NFC is on board as well. You have really good Face ID and Hand ID on here, which I don't use much, but your fingerprint scanner is on the back. It's physical. It is very fast as well, and you have very good cameras on here. Again, pretty much the same as the V50. You're just missing the telephoto lens. So you have a 12 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You also have 4K video, 30 or 60 FPS, along with a selfie camera at 8 megapixels that shoots in 1080p. You get very good cameras, very similar to the V50, good dynamic range, detail, very natural looking colors on here. a pretty good selfie camera as well. Overall, you'll be very satisfied with the photos for this, and you can always throw Gcam on here as well. You do have a 3500 milliamp battery with 21 watt fast charging along with wireless charging as well, which is really good. This phone actually has really good battery life. I easily get over 8 hours of screen on time with my G8, so no complaints with battery life. You can easily go a day and a half, no problem. So be sure to let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.